I'm with Jonathan Feldstein from Root and Branch. Now, Jonathan, you live in Efrat, but you're stranded in the US. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I was anyway scheduled to be in America for a month, beginning the first week of February for a number of conferences and then our own Root and Branch conference. Most of the work, well, as you know, Root and Branch is a partnership between myself and my friend Marzi Amirizadeh and her nonprofit, newpersia.org, and my nonprofit, Genesis 123. So I'm traveling around America doing all of my normal meetings, and as we were getting closer, anyway, even before leaving, there was a lot of anxiety as to when this operation vis-a-vis Iran might happen, and would we be able to get out, much less get back. I wanted to be able to get out. I had work to do and meetings and conferences that I was speaking at, plus our own Root and Branch conference that took place a little over a week ago. And it was so remarkable. And I was glad to get here, but every day being here in America has been a wonder as to, well, what will happen when the operation or war with Iran actually begins. And as it happens, my wife came to America in the interim, not to visit with me, but to see her father. And we were concerned that she might not get back. She got back in time 2 days early. So she's been in Israel at home with our family, and important for her, for everybody, pitching in. My son and daughter-in-law have moved into the house with our youngest grandson because their building in Jerusalem doesn't have a bomb shelter. And for me, now since the operation began, I was ticketed on 2 flights. United, which is where I mostly travel with for efficiency reasons, with all the domestic flights I do in the US, canceled on me. So I have a flight that's currently scheduled to depart the night of the 23rd on El Al. But I feel a bit like a nomad because until yesterday, I didn't know where I would be tomorrow, literally. And I'm now still setting up meetings and appointments. This is the second of 3 interviews that I've scheduled for today. Everyone wants to get an update and how is it being stuck in America? And I've got more of these briefings and meetings. So I'm making my time real productive, but you understand this because you live there. It's a strange thing, but I feel very distant from being at home, literally my family and my home. But especially at a time of war, I feel like I should be there. And it's frustrating, and I think it's even a little bit more unnerving for me to be stuck here, not being able to get back, than for my family dealing with the stresses that you're also dealing with air raid sirens all the time and running for bomb shelters and not working and not sending kids to school and all of the stresses that go along with it.
Mm. It must be quite stressful not knowing where you're going to stay. Have you had people helping you with places to stay?
That's a great question. I have an abundance of offers of places to stay. Most of them, and it's lovely, friends literally all over the country, and I could stay anywhere. But for me, it's not so much a question of where to stay, but what am I going to be doing? So literally yesterday, when I realized that most of my meetings, events, briefings, interviews that I have for the coming week are virtual, I decided that I would go to New Jersey and stay with my brother and sister-in-law. And they have plenty of space and it's fine. I've already now, for what day is today? 2 days from now, set up a meeting in southern New Jersey face to face. So I'm doing my work, but if I need to fly to somewhere to speak in a church next Sunday, and I hope I'll have that opportunity, or maybe in New Jersey next week, it's all kind of day by day, then I can fly just as well from New Jersey as I can from Atlanta or Dallas or anywhere else in the country. So it's working out just fine. It's not my place to stay that I'm worried about. It's just me maximizing my time. And the good news on that is that my time is very full anyway, and I have very little of it left. So I'm being productive.
Are you missing the 2 a.m. runs to the bomb shelter?
I don't miss it, but I have to say that because of the traveling and literally, except for this past weekend when I slept in the same hotel for 3 consecutive nights, I average every other night in a different place. And I'm really not sleeping so well. And that's not to say that my lack of sleep is less significant than my family and millions of Israelis who are being sent to the bomb shelter. I know that I would be more exhausted. I know that I would be more stressed and frustrated and perhaps even angry about the situation if I were in Israel and dealing with those 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. The other day, several came for between midnight and 6 a.m. all across Israel. So I don't miss the being awake. I miss being there and part of the national experience of my country and my people.
Mm. Now, because you're from Israel and you're in America, have you been able to do lots of interviews about the war itself, explaining why Israel and America are doing this war with Iran?
Oh, sure. I just came from a 2-hour TV program on Watchmen Broadcasting in Augusta, Georgia. And as I said, this is the second interview. When we finish, I have another interview coming last week, and I have more scheduled this week, but I don't even remember all of them. I have at least 2 or 3 more currently scheduled, plus a briefing. If anyone wants to join a briefing that I'm doing and you're in the American time zones, Thursday night, people can connect with me through genesis123.co. I'm doing my own briefing Thursday night American time. And last week I had 8 interviews and briefings being stranded here. So people want to know. I'm watching the news. I'm following the news. Much of the news, as in the West, they feel that they have to balance by showing how difficult it is to be living in Beirut now because of Israeli strikes on Hezbollah. But the reality of life in Israel and why this war is not just but necessary, and why, as we're celebrating America's 250th anniversary of independence, why this is indeed an existential war for the United States itself. So I've had a lot of conversations with people like that.
Why is this war important?
First of all, it should have been done a long time ago. It could have been avoided if successive presidential administrations had clamped down and not allowed the Islamic Republic to get as strong as it was. We can go back into relative recent history and to the Obama administration, which did 3 very foolhardily things. First of all, signing the JCPOA, which didn't prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. It just kicked the can down the road a decade. And we know now, even if we give credit to Obama for just simply being naive, we know now that they never had any plan to uphold that, and they were going to build the nuclear weapons anyway, and they've been working toward that. That's number one. Number two is that the Obama and Biden administrations have provided billions of dollars of material funding to Iran, which is a direct result, as a direct result of which we have this war. If they had squeezed Iran, if the Bush administration, if Clinton administration had squeezed Iran, if Jimmy Carter hadn't made the terrible mistake that he did in 1979, we would be living in a very, very different world. But we're not. And we've allowed this cancer to grow, not just in Israel, around the world, in the Middle East, threatening Israel through its terrorist proxies, threatening Israel directly. But we have to remember that when the Iranians chant death to America, it's not just a child's nursery rhyme that they're chanting because it sounds cute. It's a war cry. It's something that they mean. It's something that they believe. And you can be sure that if down the road they were able to acquire a nuclear weapon and the way to deliver it many more thousands of miles to America, they would. But the Iranian regime, in addition to funding Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and various Iraqi proxies, the Iranians, we know, directly were responsible for at least one of the assassination attempts on President Trump. The Iranians have agents planted not just through the United States, but through the world, who are there to undermine the Judeo-Christian values that we share. And in many cases, they have. And somebody has to put a stop to this. And it needs to be a full-fledged stop, not a setback. And maybe the U.S. administration and maybe Israel is not saying that the goal should be regime change. But to be very honest, without regime change, without an Iran that's allowed to finally come out from under the boot of nearly half a century of being hijacked by these Islamists, imagine when that happens and Iran rejoins the families of the world as a peaceful member, prosperous, and their resumption of relations between Israel and Iran with the rest of the world in a way that is mutually beneficial instead of mutually threatening. These are the things that people need to understand, that we're dealing directly today with the consequences of decades of appeasement and direct funding. And hopefully this will be the consequence of this war will be the end of the Islamic regime in 2026, so that certainly by next year, Iran can begin to emerge as a free nation.
Now, Iran funds Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. If we deal with Iran and Iran is decimated and they're financially destroyed, will that bring peace to the Middle East?
I believe it will bring us closer to peace. And I've said this and I've written about it, closer to world peace. It's a nice phrase that Miss Universe contestants will say, then certainly since the end of the Second World War. And I would argue even before the Second World War, because the threat that the Islamic Republic epitomizes through extremist Islam is a greater threat to the entire world than the Nazis and the Japanese and their axis all together up until and throughout the Second World War. And so will it bring peace? I don't know. What we are seeing, and came up in the last interview I did, we're seeing Iran doing something remarkably stupid by attacking its Arab and Sunni Muslim neighbors. Clearly, the Sunnis and the Shiites don't love each other. They've fought against each other. They've slaughtered one another, and they'll continue to do that. But we're seeing now, even if it's not public, we're seeing even some of the more radical Arab Islamic states articulating that that the Islamic Republic needs to be brought down. And that's the Israeli dream. And so if everyone's on the same side, and if we can work together and realize, even to its full extent, the Abraham Accords, and one of the things that people in America and probably around the world are particularly concerned about is the price of fuel right now. So one of the ideas behind the Abraham Accord, anyway, has been to build a pipeline from the Persian Gulf straight across to Israel, so that you can load, instead of having to go around these two areas that are often controlled by terrorists, the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Aden next to Yemen, that you could actually have oil just shipped directly across the Middle East to an Israeli port, and then from there to all of Europe and anywhere else that it needs to go. That also, on an economic basis, allows the countries of the Middle East to thrive and prosper together. And if we're thriving and prospering together, I think necessarily that brings us at least more peaceful relations.
Now, you bring Christians to Israel with root and branch, and your partner in that is Iranian. Tell us about that relationship.
Well, it's a remarkable relationship. We met when I hosted her on my podcast, Inspiration from Zion, just a little over 3 years ago. Then she came to Israel for the very first time. Next month will be 3 years, and we met and became friends. God gave her a remarkable vision to bring Christians to harvest olives in Israel, and she then turned to the person who was at that point her first and only Jewish friend, me, to partner together. And we've built this remarkable program to bring Christians to harvest olives. We're harvesting from public olive trees throughout Israel. And what we realized in our first year, which was in 24, that we're not just harvesting public trees, but we're indeed harvesting wild olive trees, which is the metaphor in Romans 11 that Paul's referring to, that Christians shouldn't be arrogant to think that they have replaced the Jewish people, the root, meaning the Jewish people, but they are grafted in to the root, the covenant, through their faith. And so we are indeed harvesting wild olive trees, and we've made some unbelievable olive oil that we're now beginning to sell at rootandbranchisrael.com to sell as anointing oil, and the proceeds of which come back to be a material blessing to people in Israel who have been impacted by the war. And yes, we're now recruiting for our fall harvest in October. So again, anyone who wants information, join us in Israel to have this remarkable experience of harvesting olives in Israel together can go to rootandbranchisrael.com. But our partnership and the conference that we just held a little over a week ago are simply remarkable and personify what we both hope for Israel and Iran and the future of the Middle East, which is the restoration of warm relations between Jews and Persians and Israel and Iran, as existed historically going back to King Cyrus, and in more modern times up until the Islamic Revolution of 1979.
Yeah, I imagine she's really hoping that the Islamic regime collapses and that there's better days for her people, the people in Iran.
Very much so. She's been celebrating when she got news of the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. She was celebrating. I think one of the most powerful things that she shared with me, at least, was when somebody, I don't know if it was America or Israel, hit the building that housed the Islamic Revolutionary Court. And she said, wow, that's where I spent so many hours on trial for apostasy because of my Christian faith. And that's where they brought down the death penalty because of my faith. And now she's so excited to see that and other members of the regime and remnants of the regime now destroyed.
How can Christians pray about this situation in Iran?
Well, actually, stay tuned. She has an article coming out that I'll share with you, and maybe you should have a conversation with her about it. But God, let's just put her name out there. Marzia Amirzadeh, her website is marzisjourney.com, and people can, if you can't spell that, I can spell it out for you, but people can contact me through Genesis 1-2-3. But why do I mention all of that? In her books, she recounts many of the visions and dreams that God gave her, one of which really clicked this week as a friend from Europe shared a dream of his, and she remembered a dream that she had where essentially people need to fast and pray for 7 days in all of the 7 countries that border Iran. And I can't remember the names of all of them. I know I'll miss one. But the idea is now to have a mass global prayer to release the darkness that's over Iran now. And so she's organizing something like that. And I'll be glad to share that with you. And or more importantly, maybe you should have a conversation with her to share it. But to pray for Israel and the United States that we're victorious and there should be no more casualties and no more damage. And to pray for the people of Iran that they will indeed rise up and take back their country, and the Ayatollahs and the members of the IRGC and leaders, people who have been responsible for repressing the Iranian people for so many decades, nearly half a century, will be ousted from control and will indeed hopefully be tried for those who can be found and tried. And it's very hard to think about, but it's not far off that Iran can become a peaceful, democratic country, and therefore we need to pray that whatever transition in leadership comes, that also needs to be peaceful, because unfortunately there are many groups of other terrorists and fake reformists who are claiming that they represent the Iranian people but really don't, and really have ill will and very bad intentions for Iran. So we need to pray that Reza Pahlavi will return, and he will use the fact that he's raised most of his life, grown up most of his life in a democratic West and understands what democracy is about, and hopefully will bring that for the first time to his people.
Has this trip to America been a great opportunity to connect with Christians and build deeper relationships?
Absolutely. From everywhere. From first week I was here and I had an amazing briefing. My second night on the ground in Northern Virginia in someone's home, all the way through the last 2-hour TV interview I just did, and everything in between. I think, that's one of the beautiful things, and my Jewish friends are learning about it, but don't fully understand why there are so many Christians around the world who truly do support Israel and the Jewish people. It's not something that's understood widely among Jews, but I think, and that would be anyway, but this war makes us realize that indeed it is a war of good and evil. And indeed, we as Jews and Christians, for all of the shared values, shared faith that we have, are and must remain on the same side of the equation.
What is your prayer for Israel and Iran at this moment?
My personal prayer, and I don't usually do this on my own behalf, is that I'll be able to get home soon. But that by this time next week, you and I can speak, and we'll be a few miles apart physically instead of several thousand miles apart. And I pray for Israel that we continue to have the fortitude to go through the very stressful and fearful times that we have, remembering that God has promised that he will always protect us. And we know that. But in the very dangerous times, we also need to be aware that sometimes, we're always human, and it's not always going to be easy to overcome the normal human stresses and fears. I pray that for the Iranian people, that they also will rise up, will reclaim their country, and have a sense of justice as the Islamic Republic is eliminated, and for American and Israeli troops and anyone else who is involved in the fighting, that they continue to be successful and safe.
What's your website for people? Maybe there's some people wanting to come and pick some olives this year.
Sure.
So what's your root and branch address? And also what's your Genesis address as well?
Right. So Genesis123.co is the way to connect with me personally on all of the projects that I'm doing, from the books that we've published and the webinar and podcast series and all the things. Root and Branch is one of those truly remarkable projects, and it's unique because it's a partnership, and people can either go to my website, Genesis123.co, or go directly to rootandbranchisrael.com.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing today.
It was a delight, and I hope the next time we can do this in person over coffee without fear of having to run to a bomb shelter.
Amen.